Welcome to We Digress with Joy and Jess. Join hosts and longtime friends Joy Simpson and Jess Perry as they tackle the stuff of life the only way they know how, with honesty, faith, and humor. This is We Digress with Joy and Jess. Hey everyone, welcome to We Digress with Joy and Jess. I am Jess.
And that would make me Joy. And I don't always sound like a man, so sorry for your ears today. Gravelly.
Saucy. Yeah, and 'tis the season, man. I don't know what the weather's like out there, but like today it's overcast and gloomy, and I want it to be cold because I want to snuggle up, but it is not. It is like 85.
Well, we had a heat wave all last week, but then it cooled down by like midweek, and then it heated back up over the weekend, and then this week has been mid-70s.
Oh man, that sounds delightful.
Well, yeah, mid-70s, late 70s. Yesterday was 79. Today's supposed to be like 77 and it go down from there. So like drastic changes. And I think I'm finally over the sinus infection, but I still am having residual whatever going on. So yeah, like you said, this is the season.
You sent your sinus infection to me because I have been battling one for the last week. Yeah.
Yeah. As long as you don't get the toothache, I think it makes it worse. The toothache is just, now that I understand that revelation and I've experienced it, it's the worst pain. I've, like, when you're literally, guys, when your whole side of your face hurts, it's the weirdest thing. You want to take all your teeth out, but it don't really have anything to do with your teeth.
Well, since I had my wisdom teeth out, it's a lot better. Like whenever I have allergies and stuff, like it's just a lot better because it was all my, all the roots are like right up here, like right next to your sinuses. Yeah. But right now, like right here, this little section of my head, this is where everything is living. Right here, this point, right here.
I had most of it. Mine was like right here in this little area, and then here, it was like. But then this week I've had migraines. So
you just can't. We can't win. Yeah.
Right. Yesterday I woke up with a migraine, and I basically had it until about 8:30 last night, even after taking medicine. So trying to teach a theater class, multiple theater classes. I have 6 classes every Thursday for sure. And trying to teach them. So I had to explain. I do a thing where I try to be very honest with my kids so they know, like, I'm not like in a bad mood or something like that.
Right.
And all the lights were on in the auditorium where I teach theater. And I was squinting and, I was like, you guys, I have a really bad headache. It's something called a migraine. And so if I put my sunglasses on, not being weird, my head hurts and the light makes it worse. They're like, oh, okay, Miss Joyce. So they were all pretty much understanding. Of course, my 5th graders, they gone 5th grade. But
the accuracy.
I mean, it got to the point yesterday. I didn't have like a major problem like that. But one of my teachers drove off yesterday, and the middle of her class, she walked out, told my boss she was leaving. They were giving her a headache and she didn't feel like dealing with it, and got in her car and left. But then she came back. And one, I had never seen that happen before.
Yeah. Yeesh.
2, this is somebody I've been like, okay, Lord, I've been trying to mentor this person in a way. God told me to give her my book the other day. Just give it to her. I gave it to her, I signed it, and gave it to her the day before yesterday. And she told me yesterday she had started reading it. And I had to explain to her even later, you cannot allow anybody, whether it's kids or not, to get you to the point where you're so frustrated that you risk your job. I said, because any other boss would have not only written you up, you would have been gone.
On the spot, yeah.
On the spot. You cannot allow circumstances. You cannot allow their behavior. I said, because at the end of the day, they see you get frustrated, they've won.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You are allowing a group of 9 and 10-year-olds to rule you.
Yep.
You cannot allow that to happen anymore. Because I know I was going to be nicer than what my boss had to say. He didn't even want to talk to her anymore. Because he came I was teaching my class. We're going to get to the subject. It's an early digression. I was teaching my class, and he came, and he's like, I need to talk to you right now. And I was like, okay, kids, hold on. Work on that song real quick. I'll be right back. I had to step to the side. He's like, I just want you to know that Miss Blippity Blue decided that she was going to walk off. And I was like, huh? Like, I said, walk off where? Like, I don't. He was like, she's leaving. She left. And I'm like, I was confused. So he said, I just want you to know where my head is at right now. Look at my face. And I was like, okay, all right.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, he didn't let the kids see him or anything, but he was really upset. So then he now, because we switch off admin days.
Right.
And so it was his admin day, but he also now had to take a class because we were down 2 teachers. One teacher was not there because, Mr. Jelani, the drummer, he also plays at Disneyland. So every other Thursday he is doing a show. He's doing The Lion King at Disneyland.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So, we already were down a teacher, but we had enough teachers to
cover. Yeah.
To cover. So he was just really frustrated, and I was like, Lord, like, do something. By the time, like, maybe 10 minutes later, he says, Miss Joy, on our walkie-talkies, like, go to channel 12. That's the channel. Nobody else is supposed to hear me. But I swear some of my teachers, they go to 12 when he tells me to go to 12, and they hear my business anyway. But anyway, that's another story for another day.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. So he tells me she's back. We'll deal with it later. I said, oh, okay, no problem. So I turned it back to 11 because 11 is the channel we're supposed to be on. And the kids were like, Miss Joy, everything okay? This is my 3rd grade group. I was like, okay, yeah, we're good. Let's go back to the song. We're learning our finale song this year is a pentatonic song called Kid on Christmas. It came out last year with Megan Trainor and some other
fun.
people. So anyway, so that was my day yesterday. Between I have a migraine, all of that's going on. I'm trying to teach and be like animated and do movements. And not only that, my hip is swollen again. Where I had told, well, you guys didn't know, but a few months ago, all of a sudden my right hip had started getting swollen, and I like didn't know where it came from. We think possibly sciatic, but found out through like X-ray it's some kind of like degeneration type situation.
Right.
And I'm not supposed to stand a long time because that exacerbates it. Well, a couple days ago, I stood for like without my cane for like 30 minutes. Literally a day later, I'm like having issues. So it's been a crazy week, spiritually, emotionally, physically.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be honest. There might be some tears probably in this episode, but it's been a week. But amen, I made it.
And that's all we can say, right?
Amen.
Right? I feel you. It's been bonkers over here the last 2 weeks. And John was out of town this week for work. He had to go to Alabama for court. So he was gone a couple days. And so I had to, do like his chores and stuff, which rude. No, it's fine. I had to take out the trash like a big girl, and it was fine. But like, yeah, so he was out, and he's been having a rough week of things, and just lots of stuff going on, and his work is chaos, and it's a really high stress, high pressure situation, and that's hard to sit in for long periods of time. And so he's been struggling, just trying to make sure that he's in the right place and in the right headspace and all that kind of stuff. And then how do I help him in that, And then at the church we had a couple of massive events go on. We had our volunteer appreciation gala last week as we record this. And next week, while I'm out of town, we're having one of our biggest events of the year, which is called Backpack Buddies. We have an organization here in Pooler that it's part of our food pantry situation. So kids that get lower free school lunches, a lot of these kids also struggle with food insecurity on the weekends. And so they don't have food in their pantries. And so Backpack Buddies, these kids who are part of it, they get a bag full of food every Friday that lasts them the weekend. It's got a couple meals in it, stuff that kids will eat. So there's Easy Mac and stuff like that. But there's also like nutritious stuff in there too that's pretty good. Some granola bars. Trying to give them the breadth of protein and things like that. So, our goal is we do this event called Backpack Buddies Sunday, where we invite the entire community. For every person in attendance, our church will donate $10 to Backpack Buddies. And the goal is that we fund the entire program for the year.
That's amazing.
And then we also take a special offering to help fund the associated food pantry for the full year. So I've been trying to ramp up to that and get a bunch of creative stuff done because like this stuff all changed, and doing a bunch of filming for that. And we had staff meeting on Tuesday, and we were going through the calendar basically for the rest of the year, just kind of overview of what's coming up on the calendar. And my executive pastor was sitting to the left of me, and he would read something off, and I would be like, oh no. Like, and my anxiety would just like elevate as I was hearing all of these events because, when we do all these events, they're individual ministries, right? But because I am communication, I am responsible to communicate and do creative for all of these events.
Right.
And so, particularly going into this season, it's bonkers. So I've spent the last, 2 full days just working on creative elements, because the problem is I'm trying to build out my team on this side, but stuff has to get done while it's in process. And since I'm just starting to get my feet under me, I've been there 7 months, something like that. So no, not even. I've been there 6 months. So I'm starting to get a feel for it, but now I've got to try and get a team together because it's the admin stuff is not really sustainable for me. So it's just been a lot. So I this week, something about these last 2 weeks have just been food for coconuts,
Yeah, I agree. And yesterday I had 2 people remind me one reason why the last week or so has been challenging, and kind of somewhat settled me on understanding that it's partially spiritual warfare as well, because of what we have coming up next week. As we record this, we are doing our women's conference next Saturday. And it's been a lot of challenges and some fears, some doubting. And so it was just coincidental after I spoke with you yesterday that someone called just to tell me something or ask me a question, but totally heard my voice that I was shaky. And I was in tears. I was trying to figure out some things mentally, trying to figure out some spiritual and business things logically. Right. And that doesn't always work because spirit is not logic. Okay. We know that. And so they called. I was pulled it together. Hey, what's going on? They're like, what's wrong? I was like, I have a migraine, whatever. And they're like, oh no, they're like, no, but something else is wrong. You sound like you've been crying. What's up? And I just kind of shared what we had conversed about. And she said, don't worry about it. She said, it is all because of what God is going to do next week that doubts are creeping in harder than normal. She was like, and I didn't give her too much detail about anything, just the face value, because I was like, it's not nobody's business. But at the same time, my best friend Jen was texting me and can't wait for next week. I don't know what's happening with you this week, but know that God hears you, and know that anything that's going on in your life this week that is not looking positive or making you feel like you can't trust him is all because of the ministry that's going to happen. I believe in the overflow. I hadn't even told her about our numbers or anything. I hadn't said anything to either one of these people about any of that. But it was like God used them to encourage. I still struggled with it throughout the day mentally, but tried to push that down for the spiritual. And so it's amazing that I had to look at that and go, yeah, you're right. It could possibly very well be that a lot of it is spiritual warfare. And what happens with spiritual warfare, it attacks mind, body, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't just attack one thing. It goes for blows. And it keeps you away from praying, but it makes it for, at least for me, at times of warfare, it it knocks down my prayer to where I'm like, I don't even know what to pray anymore. And so the fear of walking into the unknown in this next week and possibly other things has shaken me a tiny bit, in a way. And with, like you said, this season has a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't even thought about Christmas for church because I've been so busy with Christmas for work. I
Right.
haven't thought about, I had one of the leaders, because again, like she said, for her job, leaders have to contact me to make their thing creative, or
Yeah.
to do a video for it to be creative. And like a week ago, I had never heard of National Sunday School Day. Okay. We've never even done anything for National Sunday School Day. Well, the Sunday school director calls me a couple weeks ago. I hadn't even seen it on the calendar. Okay. They called me. Hey, I gave this date to our our the person that does calendar. I can't think of what the title
Your
is right now.
admin.
Yeah, but we should give her a different name. It's like Secretary of State, but it's not. It's like I can't think of it. Anyway, this date a few months ago, but I hadn't seen an announcements yet. October 15th, we're doing this, and this, and I need you to create some stuff. Okay, well, A, he is supposed to let me know so that I can create. But B, he's not supposed to contact me directly exactly like that, especially when I wasn't aware of the date yet. So it's like, and I'm like, I haven't gotten anything creative done for October, November, December at church because I've been busy, focusing on. The difference is it's not my full-time job.
Right.
And so I do
Right.
have to focus on the job that pays me, and then the job that pays my soul, which is what we
Right.
do. And
Right.
so, not saying that my church doesn't feed my soul. I'm not saying that.
No,
Please
but
don't go back and tell my
it's
pastor that.
you have other
But
things. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I
Yeah.
digress. Back.
Well, no, but I mean, it kind of goes into it because, like, you step out on faith and you do things and you hope that God provides what you need in order to continue to do it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you head in a direction. And we experienced this on a very personal level, like when we started going through all our fertility stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We stepped out on a journey towards embryo adoption, and we spent all the money and all the time and all the medicine and all that. And we went through 2 rounds of fertility treatment doing what we thought God had pointed us towards.
Mm-hmm.
And then the reality was that, we had an unsuccessful round, and then we had a round with an early miscarriage. And so, and then of course COVID hits. And so you have to sit there and go, okay, but God, I stepped in and did the thing that you asked me to do. And then now I've not gotten the result that I thought I was going to, because I was going ear leading. So I thought it was going to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that fear begins to creep in, like, did I hear wrong? You start second guessing and
Guessing.
questioning
Mm-hmm.
yourself and
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. And I think sometimes um we can get stuck in the fear of the what ifs, and then we don't move. And I have lived, that's been my story, especially when it comes to our family and
Mm-hmm.
fertility, for the last probably 3 years. Now, part of that was just COVID threw a wrench in everything. And then we moved across the country, all this stuff. But also just like both John and I have had this overwhelming sense that we just don't know what the next story, the next chapter is. Like, we don't, and candidly, I have come to a place where I'm like, okay, Lord, you have shut the door for that. Like, I'm not going to be a mom. And that is requiring me to face my greatest fear and the thing I never wanted to happen. And sorry.
No.
But here's the thing, as I am literally sitting in this moment, some days are better than others. But it's okay. I'm okay.
Yeah.
Um we've all, and you in the last year have had to walk through this. Like, you've had to walk through a season that you never wanted to, and a thing that you were afraid of what was going to happen when you had to walk through losing your dad. Like, these are things, so much we walk through situations in life that terrify us. The thought of losing people we love, losing our jobs, losing things for the most part, being sick, whatever it is that we go through when we are afraid of whatever big scary thing is in front of us. Fear is not necessarily a bad thing. Fear in a if we look at things as God's gift sense, like, God makes us afraid of heights because heights are dangerous, right? It is a, it is a self-preservation measure, right? Fear tells us that something wrong is potentially ahead of us, and we need to take a step back and evaluate and make sure that we're, like, not gonna, jump off a cliff. My family tells a story, John's family tells a story about when they were on a family vacation, and my father-in-law's had back surgery and stuff like that. And they were at the San Francisco bridge, and John and his dad got out to look at the bridge, and his mom doesn't like heights. She's like my mom. They both hate heights. And she just kept bothering him. She's like, "You've got to come back." No, she was afraid the whole time that something was going to happen. And it's become this funny family story. But I mean, she has a point. We have a point. Like, we don't do these things because it's an indication that, like, danger is ahead.
Right.
It's what we do with our fear in those situations when we have no choice but to go through them. What do we do with our fear in those moments?
Right. No, I agree with that. I used to tell people sometimes you have to have a healthy fear. And there are certain things biblically that God tells us to have fears in certain aspects, right?
Right.
If we don't have a healthy fear of certain things, like you said, we could jump off a boundary, but jump off of a cliff or do dangerous things. But, or children, if they don't, do certain things that, if they're not afraid to, I would say this, most kids are not afraid of anything. They
don't have good self-preservation.
They have self-preservation. But if, as a parent or as a person, adult in their life, you don't tell them that jumping off the roof of the house is not safe, and the consequences, like we mentioned on another episode, cause and effect, the consequences of that can be detrimental to them, and however you explain detrimental to a child. But there are times where it's a healthy fear, but then where fear becomes unhealthy is when you just stop and you become stagnant in not only your relationships with people, but with God, and in your walk and in your purpose and in what He's called you to do. Those are the times where fear is more of a hindrance than it is of helping us. And you have to learn the difference and the balance. There's even a certain fear you're supposed to have of the Lord, not to fear Him as a scary big God, not to fear Him as a mean, vengeful, but there are times where His vengeance is required. You know what I mean? But it's like you have to, for me, I stand in awe of Him, not because I fear Him, it's because I love Him. But I also have to, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, I do need to fear His wrath of my sin. Does that make sense? You know what I mean?
Right.
When I have been consciously walking in sin, there was still a fear of what God was going to give me as a consequence, because all still in the back of my mind and in my heart, I still knew Him. I know what I was doing was wrong. Not that it makes it better. I knew what I was doing was wrong, but it tells you still how much you love God when you still think of Him and you're wrong. And to understand that there is vengefulness, there is wrath from there's a consequence for your actions, right? And so
Right.
those are the ways that I think of when you say you fear the Lord, not
Right.
because you have to walk on pins and needles or eggshells with him. It is
Right.
because of the things that we do flesh wise that are not according to the will of God. And so what the enemy does is take that healthy knowledge of fear and turns it into a detriment of our health in fear. It makes you not, like I said before, not want to grow. It makes you just want to give up sometimes. It makes you
Right.
not want to. You see a vision or God told you to do something, but you're like, I don't even want to do that because I'm afraid I'm going to fail. That's when fear is not healthy. Maverick City has a song, Fear is Not My
He's
Future.
not my future.
One of my favorite songs because I always sing it with my chest because I want to remain. I'm a faith believer, right? I'm somebody who believes that God can truly do the impossible. Even when it looks like he's not doing it, I still believe he can do it. And I also believe if he doesn't do that thing, there's something greater
Right.
or there's a different way. I believe
Mm-hmm.
that's where I stand in faith. But so I remind myself, especially when that song comes on, fear is not my future because he is. No matter what happens, no matter what doesn't work out, no matter what plan fails, no matter whatever it is, it's still not supposed to carry you through. It's a
Right.
momentary thing. And you have to recognize that he is not only your future, but he is your present. That is where our strength lies because fear wants to weaken our mind, body, and spirit. It wants to cripple you. That's the best way I can think of it. It wants to cripple you. It wants
Right.
you to, and then what happens with fear? Fear breeds. It's not just one thing. Fear breeds doubt. Fear breeds worry. Fear breeds isolation. It breeds all these different things. And I, not to go to my book or anything, but in the book I share how God had to show me that because you are taking on every time you fear something that is not healthy fear, all these other things start to breed and then they attach and they stick on you. And then you get to be weighed down with the weight of things that had no belonging to you. It wasn't supposed to be on you, but because you opened the door to fear, all of its cousins came in.
Mm-hmm. Right. We know the Bible says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And what it's saying there is not be afraid and terrified, not terrified, the
Right.
terror of the Lord, right? It's it's the healthy respect for the power and authority of God. It's the same kind of fear that we have of electricity, where we have a healthy respect for what electricity can do.
Right.
We had to have electrical work done in our house last week because apparently when they built our house, they didn't install the electrical the correct way. And
Oh,
so,
wow.
yeah, that was super fun because my studio backdrop will change soon because hopefully my office will be done soon. We're in the middle of uh, painting and getting that prepped and ready. But in order to use it, obviously I'll need electrical, and I couldn't plug stuff in up there. So we had the electrician out, and he was telling stories about electricians who did not have a healthy fear of electricity, and they're dealing with all
Mm.
this wattage and stuff. And this one, he was telling us a story about these electricians who basically started a fire because um, they overrode the breakers, right? They prevented the breakers from tripping. And what happens when you do that, if you have a house and you have breakers that trip, that is a safety device, right? That is essentially, that is, in many ways, it could be something like fear in our own lives, right? There's that electrical device. That fear is the checkpoint that says something is uncomfortable that you don't want is going to happen. And what they did was they overrode it and they said, oh no, I don't need to worry about that. And what they did was they caused the wires to get too hot and they burst into flame in the wall. And
Wow.
it sets the house on fire when your breakers fail. Um,
Right.
what that tells you is that something is wrong and it needs to be addressed and it needs to be taken care of and it needs to be fixed. And so you check the systems. Either the breaker's bad or the wiring is bad, or there's a short in the line, or it's been installed incorrectly, or something is wrong, right? Fear
Mm-hmm.
is that checkpoint. Fear is a lot like pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
C.S. Lewis says that pain is God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Basically, it helps us see that something is wrong that needs to be addressed. That's why pain
Right.
exists.
Right.
Pain is our sinus infection. Pain tells us you should probably go to the doctor and get antibiotics, even though I'm stubborn and I refuse to do so. Um, so
Yes, you should.
I'm been a doctor in forever, and I'm like, I don't want to go. It's a whole line. Anyways, all that to say,
See, I used to have a fear going to the doctor because I didn't want them to tell me something else was wrong. It felt like
yeah,
every time I went, they
yeah,
were giving me another something. And after you get diagnosed with fibromyalgia at 15 and you're walking on a cane as a kid, you don't
right,
want to go no more. You like,
right,
not unless I have to. So I get it, but you need
right.
to go.
And fear, but see, and it's so often fear is we've been through something difficult before, and we just don't want to have to go through it again. And
Right.
we don't want to be back in that same situation. And so we, instead of actually dealing with it and thinking, gosh, we're going to have to walk through this, we simply avoid it, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Probably in the same reason that like John and I have, without meaning to, we've avoided adoption because all we've heard and seen are so many horror stories of families in adoption.
Mm-hmm.
And we just don't know that we have the fortitude to get through it. Even though logically, I would say, yes, we do. The question is, do we
Right.
want to? Do we want to put ourselves in that position again,
Right.
having already endured so much loss? And
Yeah.
so if you're, as we're listening out there, like if you're in a situation where you are afraid and there is something fearful going on, I get it. Like I understand, like, and Joy gets it too. Like we understand what it's like to have fear be a part of that, because so much
Mm-hmm.
fear comes from a place of loss, a place of grief, a place of sorrow. Like it's just you've been through tough things and you don't want to do it again,
Yeah.
or you don't want
Or
to move
even
through it.
disappointment. It can come
Disappointment,
from,
so
um,
many places.
I can say this, and not again to put our business out there. Um, One of the reasons I think I struggled with part of our conversation yesterday was I had a business partner at one point in my event planning business years ago. And that ended so badly that, granted, it's a different type of business, different situation. It was in ministry. Um, but that ended so badly because of miscommunication and misunderstanding that it also, she had gone out, and I didn't even know, my hairstylist had to tell me, because she and this person were really good, are still really good friends, that she wasn't sure how she felt about me based on what this person had told her. So when I broke down the truth of what actually happened, and even the things that I did not do correctly, I told the whole, like, if you're gonna tell the truth on yourself too.
Right.
um she had a completely different understanding, and she was like, I am so sorry, Joy, because all this time I only knew one side of the story and I didn't know the other. So when it comes to possibilities of unknown in this situation, my mind went back to that hard split, to where even this person had blasted, put me on Facebook, called me a liar, all these things, right? And so I had to pull myself together, recognize, one, you're not that person. Um, Two, our friendship is always going to be there. Um,
Right.
but that's where fear tried to take me. If I'm being
Right.
very transparent, that's where fear tried to take me, because then it also took me to, you failed again. Something that you felt was right, something that you believed was from God, is not happening because of whatever reason, and you're going to fail again. And that's what has been the harder pill to swallow in all of it versus anything else. And it's not anything to do with you, it's my receptors on how fear, aka the enemy, has tried to flip the script in my mind about it. So disappointment, allows past things to start flooding in your mind. And
Right.
that's where, that was my whole point in sharing that. Disappointment allows those things to flood, old things, things 20 years ago when John broke your heart, and you're like, I don't even want to try with Roy because
Right.
John broke my heart 15 years ago, and we had this same argument that I'm having with Roy now, and it's not going to work. And so you give up and you stop. Whereas Roy was really the promise that God had for you. But because of fear of not only the unknown, but fear of your past repeating itself, you stop it. And what, as believers, or even if you're not a believer and you're listening, it is unhealthy to continue to hold on or even allow yourself, when things from the past jump up, I usually shut it down right away because I know that's not where it is now. But yesterday, I sat in it for a moment, just a moment. And even in a moment of sitting in it, 15 years ago came in my mind, that quick. And it could have easily kept me from communicating with you or anyone about what was going on, or even not accepting how God used two people who didn't know what I was sitting in momentarily to speak life into me. And if you sit too long and someone tries to speak life into you, you're not going to receive it because your mind is still blocked up because of fear. Fear is not a heart thing, it's a mind thing.
Right.
It's not a heart thing. Your heart is going to always try and override it, but your mind, sometimes our mind is sometimes what's going, like Jessica said, her logic can say, yeah, but in that situation, it is a hard thing because being a mother is something you've desired in your heart. It's not something you've had in your mind. And so you have to look at, it's almost like three truths and a lie. What are the three truths God is telling you, and what's the lie the enemy is telling you? Which way are you going to go?
Right. Well, and fear is an opportunity for us to bring our burdens to the foot of the cross. Like, fear is an opportunity to grow with God, to sit with him and let him sit with us in our humanity and in our pain and in our fear and all those things. And I'll be honest, like, I don't do a good job at this because, I think we confuse the will of God and fear and our own emotions. It can be so hard and messy because it's all spaghetti. It just jumbles up all together and you can't hardly see through it because our fear tells us one thing, because our fear is at work against the things that we want, right? The fear is the anticipation that we might not get the thing that we are hoping for. And so then we have to figure out what happens when we don't get this thing. And it's wrestled then connects with, well, God, I asked you to come through. And then why didn't you come through? And then you have to have all these conversations with God and with that. And here's the thing, and it's not to put a trite Christian bow on it, but the verse that I remind myself of constantly is, he works all things together for good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Yeah. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the good and look like I anticipate. It doesn't mean that it will turn out exactly the way I want it to. It doesn't mean that the thing that I have been working towards or pursuing or doing is going to come to pass. It simply means that in the middle of whatever season it is, God will use it for good at some point in the future. And that does not mean, don't hear me say that God didn't do something or God causes something to fail so that he can, use your story. Like that's the whole purpose was your failure. I don't believe that. I believe that God says, Jesus teaches us to pray, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Which tells me that sometimes God's will is not done here on earth. I think there's a lot of things that happen here on earth that are not God's will. There's a lot of awful things that happen here on earth. No, it's not God's will. I think there's things that happen in our own lives that aren't God's will.
Right.
I think there are things that are done to us. I think there are things that we do, not the will of God. Absolutely. When we sin and screw up, that's not God's will.
That's us.
Right? When people die apart from him, that's not his will. And so we're praying that God's will is done here on earth the same way it's done in heaven. And in doing so, we have to understand that the mystery and the magnitude of his power and his authority are not in that he works everything out into perfect detail and then sets the plan in motion and raises his hands like, work is done. No, the majesty and the power and the glory of God is revealed so often in something. We screw things up because that's what we're real good at. Right? We're super good at screwing things up, or we live in a broken world, or X or Y or Z. And God says, I know this is an awful situation. I know it's not the thing you wanted. I know it's not the thing you intended. I will bring good and glory out of this. And I will get the glory in this.
Yeah.
And if we can remind ourselves, no matter what we are walking through, that at some point God will redeem the story.
Right.
There will be redemption to it, and we may never see it on this side of heaven. We may have to wait and see it on the other side of things. But God will bring redemption to a lot of things. All things. He'll bring redemption to all things in our stories. Because that's his goodness. And so if we can take our perspective and elevate it just a little bit in the midst of our fear, fear is not a bad thing unless it stops you from trusting in the heart of God. It stops you moving forward and doing the things that he's called you to do right now in the season. Do the work in front of you. Only if you do those things, or if you operate in anger or frustration, or you operate out of that fear, that's a problem. But experiencing fear, not a problem.
The emotion of experiencing it is an emotion. I had to, I have a kid that I'm learning. He's we call them ETK. So he's a preschooler. When he didn't do something, he feels attacked and he starts to throw tantrums and cry and he's unconsolable. When he did do the thing, he has logic conversations. I've never had conversations with a 4-year-old the way I've with him. I'll call him Bob. Bob, did you push the teacher? No, I didn't do that. And he'll say it just like that. Did you push John? No, I didn't do that. Did you hit such and such? No, that wasn't me. Like that's how he talks. But the moment he was accused of doing something when he didn't do it, he fell apart. Right? And the reason I share that is to say, you have to balance and understand. And I had to tell him, I said, I understand you have big feelings right now. You have big feelings, especially when he was unconsolable. But I really need you to calm down so that we can talk about it. And the day I learned this, once he finally calmed down, he told me, I did not do that. He did it to me. I was trying to get him off of me. And that's how the other child fell. Whereas the narrative was being told that he went in the bathroom and just pushed this kid down. That's not what happened.
Right.
And his emotions. And I had to tell him, I said, you having feelings is not bad, but we have to calm so that we can communicate about it. Oddly enough, he understands talking like that. I can't talk to our 4-year-olds like that and be like communicating.
Right.
Like I can talk to him like that because his mom was like, that's how they talk. She had to figure that out as well. So I had to talk to him the way he's used to. Right. I had to look him in his eyes and I had to show him I cared and I heard him. Right? I had to go down to where he was. I had to make sure that he saw care, he saw comfort, and he saw safety in talking to me. Because if he didn't, he would never be able to express his big feelings about anything. And so that's the same thing I feel that happens with God. God is like, have the emotion, feel it, know it, but don't let it get to the point where you're unconsolable and you can't talk to me, because you have to know that you can trust me. You have to know that there's safety in me. You have to know that I would not put anything in front of you, beside you, behind you, that is not meant for you, because I care and because I love you. Those are the things that God is saying to us, but sometimes we are so caught up in the emotion that we don't hear him and recognize the safety that he has in his arms, where we can calm down and continue to push. Don't let fear be that big emotion that keeps you from hearing him too. Because what happens is, we've said this over and over in this episode, you become crippled and you start to operate out of fear and operate out of frustration. And when you operate out of those things, it only breeds contention with others. It breeds frustration. You're mad at people that had nothing to do with your situation, because now you need to get to the root of your problem. Why is this bothering you so much? Why is this hurting you so much? Why is this making you so afraid? Jessica said this earlier. Grief, sorrow, all those things are attached to that word fear. It's because we fear because of these things. Get to the root so you can heal from it, so that you can do the will of God.
Right. Right. I think the church for a long time said things like, oh, emotions are bad, or don't, emotions lie. And I've said this in small groups before, emotions lie. And I think as I have gotten older, I would rephrase that statement. I would say that emotions may fudge a little bit. And by not that they are lying, I think what happens a lot of times is that our emotions around something are pointing us to a real thing that we are experiencing in that moment, right? It is a reaction to a stimulus, and it's telling us that this thing is there. Now, what it might be doing is blowing it out of proportion a little bit. And it might be saying, this thing that's really this big, we're feeling it this big, right? And so we have to take our emotional reaction, right? And then we have to tailor a response to that, right? So if you're feeling fear as a reaction to a stimuli, that's perfectly fine. It's how you respond within that is super important. Like what are you doing about that? And as I look at areas in my own life where I'm afraid, it's in walking through the thing that I was most afraid of in my life, which is not having kids. I sit there and I go, okay, God will do something else with it. My response is, I don't like this. I don't have to like it. And that's okay to not like it. You don't have to like everything that God asks you to walk through. We don't have to like it.
That's true. Most of the time you won't.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things that you can't. How could you like it, right? We can not like something and respect that it is a thing that we are enduring, because A, we are human, and B, that's life, right? And we can also not like something and look forward with anticipation to seeing how God will redeem it in the future, right? Those are not mutually exclusive things. So as I sit in this season and I go, okay, Lord, I don't understand how I got to this point and what you are doing, and I can't see what you are building or creating. I'm simply going to say, okay, Lord, I don't get it. I don't like it. Don't want it. Didn't ask for it. This is not what I want. However, if this is the season that you have me in, if this is the circumstances and the scenario that you've got for me, if this is the story that you are writing, cool. I am excited to see what it looks like. I can't see it now, but I trust that someday I will see it. And if a season ends, if a season of things that we love or wanted or we're looking forward with anticipation ends, and we don't know what the next season holds, we know who holds the season. It's very cliched, but it's cliched for a reason, right? I don't know what my future holds, but I know who holds my future.
Right.
And, I look forward to the impact that I'm going to be able to have and a different kind of legacy that I will leave, even if it's not the legacy I wanted to leave. But it's okay. It's okay. Even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Right? Rod and staff, those are kind of offensive reference, right? But it's referencing the fact that God as our shepherd is able to take care of us, right? A rod and a staff, they were tools that a shepherd used to fight off enemies. They were used to rescue. They were used to corral. They were used to prod. All of those things that a shepherd has, right? Psalm 23. It's a reason it's such a powerful psalm for so many people, right? It's David expressing this very thing, right? Whatever it is that we go through, whatever valley of the shadow of death, even though I'm there, I will not live in fear. I know that there's things to be afraid of, but I will not live in the fear, right?
Right. It's funny because you mentioned Psalm, and I picked up my phone to go to the Bible. I'm not texting anybody, guys. And my other Bible is far away from me. I was scrolling TikTok the other night, and I think I sent this to you, but it was something in Psalm 22 that I never really paid attention to that leads into Psalm 23. Though there are different songs, all of them don't necessarily go together. Right. Like in most chapters of the Bible, chapter 1 and 2 sometimes has a lot to do with 3 and 4. So you need to know, but in Psalms it's not always that way. But this one, we always think of Jesus being the only person that said, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Yeah. And it's the psalmist.
David in Psalm 22 starts Psalm 22 with, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And I learned in this that when Jesus said it on the cross, that it wasn't just something to be said. The Sadducees and Pharisees and all the C's were out there, right? And they knew the psalm.
Exactly what was calling to mind.
He said that as a pay attention to me, because the person you've been looking for, I'm the one, but you're persecuting me on the cross. He didn't say it just to believe that God had forsaken him. He knew his assignment. He knew what he was going to have to endure, unfortunately.
Right.
Knowing that you have to literally your whole life, basically knowing that was going to be what people believed as your end, because it didn't end you. It ended sin for us. It ended non-redemption. It ended a lot of things, but it didn't end him the way they wanted to. And when we are fearing things, we often feel like we are being forsaken. But by the end of verse 22, he says, they will tell of the Lord to the next generation. They will come and declare his righteousness to a people yet born, that he has done it. And this is the Amplified version, and it is finished. Everything on the cross was already in 22. And I said, that came to say, when we go into the Lord as my shepherd and understanding who he is, they give us a glimpse of who Jesus is in this text, allowing us to understand there are going to be moments where we feel like we are in a weird space with God. There are going to be times where we are not sure, and that can be scary. But hold on, because we are going to be able to declare his name to people who don't even know him yet. And that is where the joy comes in, so that we can be able to share his goodness, even in failure, even in disappointment, even in not understanding, even in all of that. We are still going to declare his righteousness. We are still going to proclaim his name to the next generation. Right now, my pastor has this thing where he's been meeting with me and some of the other leaders in my age group. And he has been saying that partially is he wants to pour into the new generation of ministers and leaders. And it is not comfortable for some people that he is seeing us, he's having us do so many things right now, right? But what we have to understand is we don't get prepared and we don't become in a relationship with God to keep it to ourselves.
Right.
And we don't get into relationship with God to just be or say we know Jesus. It is to know him not only in every part of our being, but it's able to teach and share and help others grow in him. So these conversations even that we have on the podcast and things like that, it is not just because, we wanted to talk. We could just talk. We don't have to film it. But part of when we started this, it was an idea that came out of a love for God and a love for his people. Is it fearful at times because we don't always see the numbers we want to see? Is it scary sometimes? Absolutely. Do I put a lot of information on the internet? I do. So does Jessica. But at the end of the day, we want you to know that though there are things that you're going through, you can continue to declare the name of the Lord and his righteousness in your life, even when things don't look like the way you want to. And there are seasonal things, just like we have seasons change, although California doesn't always see it. There is a summer, winter, spring, and fall, right?
Right.
All of those seasons just serve a purpose in the ecosystem. All of those things serve a purpose in climate change. All of those things serve a purpose, right? All of those seasons have a purpose. Every season that you're going through in your life, the hard seasons, the good seasons, the bad seasons, the indifferent seasons, all have a purpose. They all have a reason. And if we are fearful of what we don't know, or we're fearful to move because of failure and disappointment, we're going to miss out on what the season has for us, because every season has a purpose.
Right. Right. So our encouragement for you as you are listening is just, if you find yourself in a season of fear, or you find yourself in a fearful situation, take a deep breath and take that back to Jesus and say, I understand that this is a season, and you can tell him you don't like it. You can tell him you don't want it. That's fine too. He is not surprised by any of that. Even Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane said to God, hey, this thing that I'm about to do that's going to be really painful and is going to result in my death, I really don't want to do this. So if there's any way that I can not do it, can you make this cup pass from me? But not my will, but yours be done.
And when you say it, you got to mean it.
Right. And, as long as you continue to say, Lord, this is what I want, but what I want is not as important as what you want, that's fine. That's an authentic relationship with God. That's an authentic encounter with him. And so our encouragement for you in this is just keep going back to God and saying, look, what is it that you want from me? How do you want me to respond? How do you want me to live? And to continue to do those things. And we hope that this is an encouragement, not that, because I think so often we get told in church that, fear is bad. Fear is bad. You shouldn't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. You're a bad Christian if you're afraid. No, fear is something that points us back to God. It's only bad if we don't respond to it well. But it can be very useful tool to take us back to reconnect with our Savior and to reconnect with Jesus, who is our Savior. I just like to repeat things. Don't want to have there be any ambivalence about that. But hey, we hope that you have, this is true. We hope that you have been blessed by today's conversation. It's been a good one for us. It's been a good one for you. We would love to hear from you. If you're going through a season or this is resonating with you in some way, let us know. You can leave a comment at joyandjess.com. You can leave a voice memo there. You can send us an email at podcast@joyandjess.com. You can catch us on the gram at We Digress with Joy_Jess. And you can even, I think Spotify's got a new cool little Q&A. What did you think? Did you like this podcast?
It's like a little poll thing.
It's very fancy. So you can leave us a note there, and we'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us, guys. Bye. See you next time. Thanks for listening. Check us out on the web at joyandjess.com.
That's JoyandJess.com. We'll see you next week.